think so far with Tua, he's been really improved from last season to this year. But of course, everyone knows it's preseason. Yes, the Falcons didn't have their starting defense. Yes, but he's driving down the field, getting those connections, especially with Waddle. Waddle connections. You saw that earlier in that preseason game against the Falcons, getting a nice connection, and then to Jizeki. Those are going to be probably the two top players he's probably going to be targeting this year. I feel generally to me, of course, obviously Fuller and Parker are out right now with injuries, but I just really see the connection with those two players. And Tua, although he did throw an interception, and yes, I heard about Tua turning the low over. Yes, I heard about all that. But let's be honest, like without that one, he played phenomenal, which I was like, this is definitely much improved. It shows he actually can mobilize now because last year he couldn't really mobilize. You kind of saw that game against Arizona, for example, where you try to mobilize, but it's kind of a little stiff a little bit for Tua. But this year he's more mobilized this year. So let's see where can Tua lead us to. I personally believe he will have a phenomenal year because one has a lot of good wide receivers and has a great tight end. Now, the only thing I'll probably push him back is probably the offensive line because our offensive line really struggles at times, especially a couple of players that some of them can be good against the run, but they're bad in the pass, or they're good with the passing block protection and they can't do the run. So it's just really determining on the offensive line and Tua not making a lot of mistakes from last season. That's the only difference I will say for Tua. But Tua overall, I think he should have a great year for Miami.
Great breakdown, E. Look, quarterbacks are always judged, sometimes harshly, from a national view and from what everybody was saying. Let me not say everybody. From what a lot of people were saying and national media, however you want to put it, Tua was criticized a lot. What's the feel like in Miami? Is the feel like, okay, people are overreacting to maybe some of Tua's struggles last year because he's so young? Or was it the feel of, well, maybe there's some truth to maybe Tua isn't that good? How do you feel about it? You think a lot of it was nonsense and too premature?
I think where everyone has the narrative is especially when he got benched in that Denver game, for example, and that Raiders game, especially he got benched twice in those games, which that shows a frown to everybody, especially he got replaced by Fitzpatrick. And some people were saying Fitzpatrick should have stayed as a quarterback until you started struggling, which I agree with that now. At the time, I was like, oh, let's put Tua in there because Fitzpatrick had a nice game in the Jets. Eventually, he was going to deteriorate because that's Fitzmagic for you. So let's put Tua in there. And, of course, Tua played against the Rams that day. But he did struggle. I mean, I personally didn't want him there, especially it was coming off a huge injury in Alabama. We did draft him. I didn't really expect him to come in the game, but he did. He had some great, phenomenal plays there. But I just feel like it's overreaction sometimes because, one, he's a rookie. I understand that he had some mistakes there, but he has some great throws, tight windows, which he's starting to do that more often than not now. Just throwing tight windows, Tua just having phenomenal there. Now, the only question with that is he the real deal? That's the main question. That's where everyone's question is. Some people are like, we should have got Justin Herbert last year. Why did we were thinking about Tua? We should have got Herbert instead because Herbert right now is doing phenomenal with the Chargers as of right now with that type of offense with Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, for example. But then when you look at Tua, he didn't have any wide receivers. If you look back after in the Kansas City Chiefs game, who were the wide receivers there? Malcolm Perry. Yeah, Jizeki, who then got hurt again. And then it's like, what other wide receivers can you name there? Mac Hollins, for example. We didn't have a lot of weapons there as well. I mean, we still had Myles Gaskin, but that was probably the only weapon we really had that was going to really consist of efficiency.
Before we move on to Myles Gaskin, we're going to talk about him in a second. Do you feel like Tua has to be great for you guys to get to the playoffs? Or do you think he just needs to manage the game well, make some plays here or there, and just not turn the ball over so much? Or do you feel like he needs to be that superstar quarterback?
I don't think he needs to be a superstar, but he just really needs to turn over the ball less and actually score touchdowns instead of field goals. Because you can look back at the Chiefs game, for example. We got 4 interceptions by Mahomes, and we only scored 3 points out of those 4 turnovers. That's just kind of alarming to me a little bit, especially we need to score points, especially this Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes will punch you to the mouth with that as well. So our defense is great, but Tua needs to get it done for us. I know it's the second year. Everyone's saying it's the second year, but the pressure's really on, especially he has the weapons around this time around. He has weapons this time. So it's really the pressure on Tua right now, even though he's a second-year quarterback, which is kind of harsh with a second-year quarterback, but nowadays the NFL is kind of
exactly.
If you're the real deal, if you're the deal, you should do it in your second year. If not, oh well, we'll just kick you to the curb and maybe you go do somewhere else better.
I agree with you, man. It's and look, we don't know what Joe Burrow is going to look like. What even Herbert's going to look like this year. Some people will think he's a top 10 quarterback. We don't know what these guys are going to look at.